I thought she was after my husband, but she wanted me. Hi, I'm Mara Quinn, and not too long ago, I was the woman who color-coded grocery lists, ironed socks, yes, socks, and smiled through my husband's passive-aggressive compliments like it was my part-time job. Spoiler, it wasn't. But then I got offered an actual job by his so-called first love. Weird, right? Turns out, she didn't want him. She wanted me. Fast forward to today. I've got my own business, my confidence back, and oh, my ex-husband? He's my assistant now. Wearing an apron that says #1 employee, by default. Stick around, because this isn't just a story about betrayal and revenge. It's about finding yourself in the most unexpected way. And trust me, you're going to want to hear how it all went down. Before we continue, please like and subscribe. Chapter 1. The Unexpected Offer? If my life had a catchphrase, it'd be, "Is that all you're wearing?" Courtesy of my husband, Adrian Voss. Master of passive-aggressive compliments. The human embodiment of a corporate spreadsheet. Try not to spill anything on yourself tonight, Mara, he said, adjusting his cufflinks in the bedroom mirror. His reflection gave me the same look he gave undercooked steak, mildly disappointed with a dash of superiority. This event is important. Translation: this event is important to me, and your job is to blend in, look presentable, and smile like you're thrilled to be my decorative houseplant. I stood there in a navy blue dress I'd agonized over for an hour, wondering if I should have picked the black one instead. But apparently, the dress wasn't the problem. I was. I'll try not to disgrace the family name, I muttered, applying lipstick with the precision of someone who's been married long enough to know that sarcasm is her only surviving hobby. Adrian didn't laugh. He rarely did unless someone above him on the corporate ladder was telling the joke. My name is Mara Quinn. I'm 32 and expert in color-coding grocery lists and apparently, invisible. I wasn't always like this. I used to have dreams, opinions, and a spark, but somewhere between I do and can you iron my socks? Yes, socks. I shrank myself down to fit into Adrian's meticulously curated life. Like one of those vacuum-sealed storage bags. But for personalities, I wasn't bitter. Okay, maybe a little bitter. Like 70% cocoa dark chocolate. Technically sophisticated but still leaving an aftertaste. The gala was exactly what I expected, sleek, soulless, and filled with people named things like Chase and Blair who used synergy unironically. Everyone smelled faintly of ambition and overpriced cologne. Adrian led me through the crowd like a man parading his latest acquisition, his hand resting on the small of my back, just enough to guide, not enough to suggest affection. We stopped near a group of impeccably dressed people laughing at something that wasn't funny. Adrian's grip tightened slightly, his posture straightening. That was my cue. Smile, Mara. Look engaged, but not too engaged. Your wallpaper with a pulse. Then he said it. Mara, this is Celine Drake. We go way back. The name didn't register at first, but then, oh, that's Celine Drake. The mythical first love I'd heard about exactly 3 times, always delivered with the subtlety of a brick through a window. The woman Adrian occasionally referenced with a casual, Celine always knew how to handle high-pressure situations, or Celine had an eye for detail, which roughly translated to, why can't you be more like her? I braced myself. Celine wasn't the kind of woman you forget. She had the kind of beauty that made you instinctively sit up straighter, like your spine owed her rent. Her sleek black dress looked effortless, like it had been stitched onto her by a team of angels with excellent taste. Her hair? A perfectly careless chignon that probably took 0 effort, but would have taken me an entire YouTube tutorial and a minor existential crisis to replicate. Adrian introduced me with a smug grin, clearly expecting sparks of jealousy to ignite in the air. His hand was still on my back, firm like a reminder. Don't embarrass me. I prepared myself for the inevitable once-over, the kind where a woman's eyes flick from your shoes to your split ends in under a second, followed by a polite smile so thin it might as well be laminated. But Celine didn't do that. She tilted her head slightly, her sharp green eyes raking over me, not with condescension, but curiosity. She murmured thoughtfully, as if she'd just discovered an interesting wine pairing. Then she turned to Adrian with a bored smile, the kind that could slice glass. Oh, Adrian. Relax. I'm not here for you. And just like that, she redirected her laser focus to me. I'm here for her. The universe paused. I blinked. Did she just? Adrian blinked too, his mouth twitching into a confused half-smile like he thought he'd misheard. But Celine didn't misspeak. She leaned in slightly, studying me like I was the most fascinating thing in the room. My first thought, did I accidentally leave a price tag on my dress? My second thought, is she hitting on me? My third thought. Why am I flattered by that? Adrian cleared his throat, trying to reassert control of the conversation. Celine has a unique sense of humor. He chuckled tightly, like a man whose ego had been poked with a stick. Celine didn't even glance at him. No, I'm serious, she said to me, her lips curving into a smirk that somehow felt both dangerous and thrilling. We should talk. I nodded, mostly because my brain had left the building, leaving only the autopilot function. Chapter 2. Signed, sealed, and liberated. The next day, I found myself sitting in Celine Drake's office, which, much like Celine herself, was effortlessly intimidating. The space was minimalist, not the kind of minimalist where someone's trying to be trendy, but the kind that whispers, I have money and taste, and I'm not here to prove it. White walls, sharp black furniture, and abstract art pieces that probably cost more than my car. Or my life. A single sleek desk sat in the middle of the room, with a chair so angular it could probably double as a weapon. Celine sat behind it, looking like the final boss in a video game, where the main objective was survive without crying. She slid a folder across the table with the same ease most people use to pass a napkin. I'd like to offer you a job, she said, her tone cool, as if hiring random women she met at cocktail parties was part of her morning routine, right after espresso and world domination. I stared at the folder. Then at her. A job? I blinked. My voice did that thing where it goes slightly higher, like my vocal cords were also confused. Yes. She didn't blink. Being my personal assistant. I waited for the punchline. None came. She continued, I need someone to manage my wellness routine, meal planning, scheduling, organization. Everything you're already doing. She paused, letting that sink in. But for me, and with an actual paycheck. Her words hung in the air, smooth and dangerous, like she'd just offered me a deal with the devil. Only this devil wore designer heels, and didn't seem the type to settle for souls, when she could buy a small country instead. I hesitated, then picked up the contract like it might bite me. It was printed on thick, expensive paper, the kind that makes regular printer paper feel like tissue. I skimmed the contents, and that's when my jaw nearly unhinged. The salary alone could fund my own midlife crisis. Like, not just a new haircut and questionable tattoos kind of crisis. I'm talking buy a yacht, name it emotional damage and sail into the sunset level of funding. And then there were the perks. A company car, a spa membership, health insurance that probably covered rare tropical diseases I'd never heard of. But the pièce de résistance? A clause nestled between confidentiality agreements and professional conduct. Must provide emergency pickled vegetables at odd hours. I read it twice, just to make sure my brain wasn't glitching. Celine noticed my raised eyebrow and smirked slightly over the rim of her espresso cup. Don't ask, she said, sipping with the elegance of a woman who absolutely did not tolerate soggy pickles. I sat there, contract in hand, feeling the tectonic plates of my life shifting under me. Why me? I asked finally, because surely she could have hired someone with an actual resume, not a woman whose most recent accomplishment was alphabetizing the spice rack. Celine leaned back, crossing her legs with the grace of a Bond villain about to reveal her master plan. I know your type, Mara. Overqualified. Underappreciated. You're running a household like a Fortune 500 company with zero compensation. Her gaze sharpened. Time to change that. I swallowed. It wasn't just the words. It was the way she said them. Like she wasn't offering me a job. She was handing me a key to a door I didn't even know existed. Adrian's voice echoed in my head. Are you really going to wear that? You wouldn't understand the business side of things. Mara, can you handle the laundry? And my presentation slides. I signed. And just like that, the world shifted. The first thing I did with my new job? I bought clothes. Not the Adrian-approved pencil skirts or beige blouses that screamed I blend well with conference room walls. No. I bought things that made me feel like me. Bright colors, bold prints, even a leather jacket I had absolutely no practical need for, but made me feel like I could win a street race or, at the very least, file my taxes with intimidating confidence. I started wearing lipstick, not the subtle, barely their kind, but unapologetic reds that said, yes, I'm here, deal with it. I walked taller. My laugh came easier, louder, like I wasn't afraid to take up space anymore. And Adrian noticed. One morning, I stood by our bedroom mirror, slipping on earrings that dangled just enough to catch the light. Adrian watched from the doorway, toothbrush in hand, his eyes narrowing slightly like I was a puzzle missing pieces he couldn't find. Who are you trying to impress? He asked, his tone casual but sharp around the edges. I paused, meeting his reflection in the mirror. I smiled sweetly, The kind of smile that used to be for him but now belonged entirely to me, myself. I didn't wait for his response. I just walked out, my heels clicking against the floor, sounding suspiciously like freedom. Chapter 3. The Jealous Husband Problem. Adrian didn't take it well, and by it, I mean me having a life that didn't revolve around his meticulously organized calendar and sock drawer. His fragile ego crumpled faster than one of his overpriced, custom-tailored shirts, probably the one he once made me re-iron because of an aggressive crease. At first, he was subtle, or at least what he thought was subtle. "Working late again?" he'd ask, voice dripping with forced casualness, like a waiter trying to upsell dessert. "Must be exhausting, all that assisting." Translation: I think you're cheating on me. But I'm too proud to ask directly. I ignored it. After all, it was just Adrian being Adrian, an emotional toddler in a designer suit. But then it escalated. I'd catch him lurking around my phone like a raccoon sniffing out leftovers. My social media suddenly had suspiciously high engagement, courtesy of one very nosy viewer who had no business liking 10 consecutive photos of smoothie bowls at 2 a.m. And then there was the day I left work early because Celine's meeting got cancelled. As I approached my office building, who did I spot parked across the street, poorly hidden behind a pair of sunglasses the size of small satellites? Adrian. Adrian, who once claimed he was too busy to attend my birthday dinner because of an important client call, now had time to stake out my workplace like a discount James Bond. His grand plan? Apply for a job at Celine's company to spy on me. Yes, you read that correctly. I found out during a Monday morning meeting when Celine strolled into my office, her expression a cocktail of amusement and mischief. She perched on the edge of my desk, waving a sleek folder like it was a winning lottery ticket. "You'll never guess who just applied for the junior assistant position," she said, her grin sharp enough to cut glass. I raised an eyebrow, sipping my coffee. "Santa Claus? A reformed reality TV star? Please say it's a reformed reality TV star." She flipped the folder open, revealing a resume so painfully formal it practically screamed, "I take myself very seriously. Adrian Voss." I choked on my coffee. "You're kidding." "Oh, I'd never joke about something this delicious," Celine replied smoothly, her grin now full-on predatory, like a cat who just discovered laser pointers exist. Apparently, Adrian had marched into Celine's office, rattling off buzzwords like synergy, strategic workflow, and, my personal favorite, leadership-oriented efficiency. Celine hired him on the spot, as my junior assistant, watching Adrian fetch my coffee, alphabetize herbal teas, and schedule my wellness appointments, was the kind of karmic justice I didn't know I needed. The first day was pure gold. Adrian walked into my office, holding a clipboard like it was a shield against the humiliation radiating off him in waves. His jaw clenched so tightly I thought his teeth might file themselves down. "Your schedule, Mara," he muttered, placing it on my desk without making eye contact. I smiled sweetly. "Thanks, Adrian." "Whoa, and could you organize the lunchboxes in the break room?" His eye twitched. "Organize them how?" "Alphabetically," I said brightly, flipping through my emails with exaggerated focus. "Don't forget the quinoa." Celine passed by the doorway at that exact moment, pausing with the perfect amount of fake surprise. "You're doing great, Andrew." Adrian's jaw clenched harder. "It's Adrian." Celine blinked innocently. Are you sure?" It got better. During one particularly satisfying afternoon, I asked him to draft an email reminder for the team. "Please write, 'Don't forget the mindfulness workshop on Thursday. Bring a yoga mat, a water bottle, and an open mind.'" He stared at me like I'd asked him to write his own resignation letter. After 10 agonizing minutes, he handed me the draft. I read it aloud, just to twist the knife. "Dear team, don't forget the mindfulness workshop on Thursday. Bring an open mind. Also, a yoga mat, and a water bottle." I looked up, suppressing a smile. "You listed open mind before the mat and water bottle. And?" he snapped. "Well," I said thoughtfully, tapping the paper, "can you physically carry an open mind? What if someone forgets theirs at home?" Celine snorted from her office. Adrian glared at both of us, his face doing that thing where it turned a very specific shade of male fragility red. But the cherry on top, one afternoon, as he meticulously arranged the office's herbal tea collection, yes, alphabetically, I walked over and said, "Adrian, could you add restocking emergency pickled vegetables to your task list?" His face was a portrait of existential crisis. "This is beneath me," he muttered. I leaned in, lowering my voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "You applied for this job, remember? If anything, you're beneath the pickles." Celine, without missing a beat, called from her office. And don't forget to label the jars. We wouldn't want a pickle emergency to spiral out of control. Adrian's sigh could have powered a wind turbine. And I'd never felt more alive. Chapter 4, The Mistress Mystery. It was a Thursday. I remember because Thursdays were smoothie bowl content days, strategically arranged acai masterpieces, complete with chia seeds sprinkled like artisanal confetti. My life had categories now. Wellness Wednesdays, self-care Sundays, and, apparently, unexpected mistress confrontations Thursdays. Talia Monroe walked into my office like she was auditioning for the role of dramatic revelation personified. Tight dress, perfectly tousled hair, one hand dramatically clutching her stomach like she was trying to keep her insides from spilling out. Adrian, who'd been sulking in the corner pretending to organize files aka spying poorly, turned a shade of white that made printer paper look tan. "I'm pregnant," Talia announced, her voice quivering with theatric precision. You know that moment when a balloon deflates with a sad squeak? That was Adrian's face. I blinked. Took a sip of my turmeric latte. "Whoa," I said calmly. "Do you want a smoothie bowl? They're organic." Talia wasn't pregnant. She was an undercover journalist working on an exposé about toxic corporate cultures, the kind that thrived on fragile egos and overpriced business jargon. She targeted Adrian, assuming he was some high-ranking executive with dark secrets. 5 minutes into interacting with him, she realized, whoa, he's just pathetic? I found out the truth when she cornered me in the bathroom 2 days later. "I'm not really pregnant," she whispered, adjusting her suspiciously lopsided baby bump. It looked less bundle of joy and more mild gastrointestinal distress. "No kidding," I deadpanned. "Your bump migrated north. I think it's trying to escape." We became friends almost instantly. Our friendship blossomed over shared eye rolls and pregnancy pillow placement tutorials. "Try stuffing it with a sweater instead of tissue paper," I suggested during one of our covert meetings. "It's less crinkly." She helped me realize that Adrian wasn't just a bad husband, he was a walking punchline in an ill-fitting narrative he wrote for himself. Chapter 5, The Glow Up and the Breakdown. Under Celine's mentorship, I flourished. "No, scratch that," I blazed. Gone was the woman who apologized for existing too loudly. I became confident, sharp, respected. I stopped shrinking myself to fit into Adrian's meticulously curated life, and started expanding into rooms, conversations, and opportunities that used to terrify me. I bought bold lipstick. I wore heels not because they were appropriate but because I liked the sound they made when I walked into a room. Click, click, confidence. Adrian noticed, of course, but by then, his opinions held the same weight as a toddler's critique of quantum physics. That's when he appeared. Ethan Pierce. Celine's charming, infuriating business rival. The kind of man who probably had perfect teeth without trying. The kind of man who made networking events tolerable simply by existing near the hors d'oeuvres. He offered me a job. More money. Flexible hours. Dental. Honestly, it was the dental that sealed the deal. Celine did not take it well. She stormed into Ethan's office like a hurricane wearing designer heels sharp enough to puncture egos. "You can't just steal my assistant," she snapped, pacing like a panther who'd just realized someone else was petting her favorite human. I sat there, sipping my coffee with the kind of calm only achievable after months of emotional growth and chamomile tea. "Technically," I said, "he offered me better dental." The tension in the room wasn't just professional anymore. It was thick. Like, could cut it with a butter knife thick? Or maybe a very sharp metaphorical letter opener. Celine's jaw clenched. Ethan's smug grin grew. "Oh no," I thought. "This isn't about me anymore, is it?" It wasn't. But for once, I wasn't the one being fought over. I was the one making the decisions, and it felt glorious. Chapter 6, Secrets, Lies, and Soup You Never Expect Your Life to Unravel Because of a Stray Piece of Paper. Maybe an all-time text message or an overheard conversation, sure. But not a manila folder stuffed between old tax returns and warranty manuals for appliances we didn't even own anymore. I found it while packing up my office at Celine's company. Technically, it wasn't my office anymore. I was moving on to brighter things, like dental coverage and a job that didn't involve alphabetizing someone else's tea collection. But there I was, sorting through my things when I stumbled upon it. Adrian's medical records. At first, I thought it was just another one of his obsessive files. He kept documents like trophies, organized in color-coded folders as if paperwork could compensate for his emotional incompetence. But then I saw the words, "Male infertility diagnosis." I blinked. Read it again. Infertile. Adrian was infertile. All those years of passive-aggressive sighs, The pointed comments about how some women just aren't meant to be mothers, the carefully curated pity party he threw on my behalf at family gatherings, it had all been an elaborate cover-up for his own inadequacy. I felt a strange mix of rage and relief. Rage, because he'd let me carry the weight of guilt, as if my body had betrayed him. Relief, because it wasn't me. It had never been me. I didn't plan a dramatic showdown. There were no rehearsed speeches or thrown wine glasses. I simply walked into his apartment, held up the folder, and said, "So, this is interesting." Adrian's face did that thing where all the blood drains south, leaving behind the ghost of a man who once thought he was clever. He stammered, of course, tried to spin it. "I didn't want to hurt you. I thought it'd be easier if you were always so emotional about." I held up a hand. "Stop." Because it wasn't just the infertility. It was the years of gaslighting, the erasure of my autonomy, the way he weaponized my own self-doubt against me like it was a hobby. "You could have just been honest," I said softly. "But honesty was never your strong suit, was it?" Later that week, fueled by righteous indignation and an aggressively strong cup of coffee, I confronted Celine. We were in her sleek, modern office, the one with overpriced art that looked like a toddler had lost a fight with finger paint. "Did you really date Adrian?" I blurted, arms crossed, bracing for some smug response. Celine burst out laughing. Not her usual polished, controlled chuckle. A genuine, snort-laced laugh that made her double over slightly. "God, no," she wheezed, wiping a tear from the corner of her eye, and suddenly, everything felt lighter. Like exhaling after holding your breath for years without realizing it. Chapter 7. The Revenge Gala. If Karma had a Pinterest board, the gala would have been its aesthetic. A high-profile event, I organized from scratch, every detail meticulously planned, from the cascading floral arrangements to the synchronized champagne pour at precisely 8 p.m. It was supposed to be my triumph, my glow-up moment. And then Adrian crashed it, drunk, disheveled, his tie hanging like a sad, defeated noodle. He stumbled into the grand hall, clutching a crumpled banner that read, in uneven Sharpie scrawl, "Mara, I'll be your assistant forever." Classy. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone dropped a canapé. A waiter froze mid-pour, champagne cascading onto an already full glass like the universe itself was cringing. Adrian climbed onto the stage, knocking over an entire champagne tower with the grace of a wounded flamingo. Bubbly flooded the floor. Guests scattered like well-dressed pigeons. Security hesitated, probably unsure if this was some avant-garde performance art. Celine didn't hesitate. She calmly reached into her clutch, pulled out a taser. Because of course Celine carried a taser, and zapped him mid-speech. "BZZZT." Adrian crumpled like his banner, hitting the floor with all the dignity of a fallen soufflé. Celine blew on the taser like it was a freshly fired pistol. "Oops," she said casually. "Slipped." The crowd erupted, not in horror, but applause. Because sometimes, Karma wears designer heels and carries a taser. Chapter 8. The Final Power Move. When faced with two tempting job offers, one from a charismatic business mogul with great dental coverage, and the other from a magnetic, slightly terrifying woman who carried a taser in her designer clutch, most people would have chosen one. But I'm not most people anymore. Once upon a time, I was Mara Quinn, Adrian's decorative houseplant, expertly blending into beige walls and pretending that emotional neglect was a love language. Now, I was Mara Quinn, founder and CEO of Soup and Serenity, a luxury wellness brand that combined holistic health, organizational bliss, and of course, an aggressive amount of soup. Because if life hands you lemons, you squeeze them into a broth, add some ginger, and build an empire. The idea came to me one lazy Sunday, sipping herbal tea, scrolling through aesthetically curated smoothie bowls, and thinking, I could do this. But, like, with soup. Soup is comforting. It's nostalgic. It's a hug you can eat with a spoon. And after surviving Adrian Voss's emotional drought, I was basically a soup sommelier. With Celine's business savvy and Ethan's marketing connections, plus a healthy dose of my own stubbornness, Soup and Serenity exploded faster than Adrian's fragile ego. We weren't just selling soup, we were selling serenity. Wellness retreats, mindfulness workshops, custom meal plans, and yes, the occasional emergency pickled vegetables. The best part? Adrian Voss, the man who once critiqued the way I folded laundry, is now my assistant. Let that sink in. My ex-husband, the self-proclaimed master of synergy, spends his days color-coding quinoa samples and scheduling my mindful reflection sessions, which is just code for me napping without interruptions. His uniform? A pastel pink apron that says, in bold embroidery, #1 employee, by default. Did I commission it personally? Yes. Did I add glitter to the thread? Also yes. One morning, as he awkwardly balanced a tray of herbal teas, he muttered, "Do you really need 3 kinds of chamomile?" I sipped my lavender-infused blend, leaned back in my ergonomic chair, and replied sweetly, "It's called variety, Adrian. Look it up." Celine nearly choked on her matcha latte from laughing too hard. Final scene, the full circle moment. I stood in my sun-drenched office, overlooking the city skyline. The space was filled with plants I hadn't managed to kill, shelves of artisanal teas, and the faint, comforting aroma of simmering broth from our test kitchen downstairs. Celine leaned against the doorway, wearing a tailored suit sharp enough to cut glass, a smirk playing on her lips. "So," she drawled, crossing her arms, "emergency pickled vegetables still part of the job description?" I set down my tea, tilting my head thoughtfully. "Only if you ask nicely," I replied, grinning. She stepped closer, eyes glinting with mischief. "Define nicely." And for once, I didn't have to shrink, or second guess, or overthink. I just laughed. A real, unfiltered laugh that filled the room. The sound of someone who finally remembered who she was all along. Mara Quinn. Soup enthusiast. Serenity expert. CEO, and definitely nobody's houseplant. Moral of the story? Never underestimate the power of a woman with a plan, and a killer soup recipe. If your life had a signature soup that described your personality, what would it be called, and what would be in it?